there was nothing to really hook onto, and you weren't going to stay that long in their booth to even find out more about them. It was a very interesting phenomenon that I was noticing. And it's about being seen and for people to really understand, what is this person's message? What are they about? So that you understand how it aligns with your interests, and if you do align with them or not. You can make that choice.
And coming out of the role as a creative director and art director in the past in the advertising realm, I'm sure you saw a lot of that in terms of photographers' books and websites and illustrators and other people who were presenting their creative talents and wares to you. And again, how to differentiate what you do in a way that sets you apart. And now you're seeing it in the art world as well. Mm-hmm. But it seems to be a struggle constantly for creative people, and especially even people in leadership in those roles, to see it well for themselves. So, yeah. Talk with me a little bit about the impact that you see coming from the instruction that you're doing around helping people understand and connect with art at a deeper level. As you say, this is not your grandfather's art appreciation class. So how's this affecting the way that you go about your own work?
Well, that is an amazing question. This is brand new work for me. I'm actually, I had just finished writing the content for my course that I'm going to be, it's an online course that I'm going to be putting out in a few months. I have to produce it all now. That's the next challenge. But it came about in an interesting way because it is a little unusual to think about art having a purpose, and actually not just one purpose, but 7 main purposes, believe it or not. It came about through this wonderful book that almost hit me on the head. It jumped out at me at the perfect time, which is what I love about books and movies and things of that nature. They can actually change your life and give you an idea that changes your life if you choose to go along on the journey.
Yes, they do.
So what happened was this book by my favorite philosopher named Alain de Botton. He lives in the UK, and he wrote a book called Artist Therapy, and it was all about the fact that art actually has a purpose. And we know as creators, art is a very, very profoundly powerful thing. It's part of our DNA. It's been part of human society since caveman days. I mean, there's a reason we drew on cave walls. And it's been part of every culture, every society, it's been part of humanity since the dawn of time, and you can't get away from this stuff. It's everywhere. And what I find is kind of tragic is that for some reason in modern times, the conversation around art, especially sort of contemporary modern art, it's sort of gone away. So I noticed at going to a lot of these art fairs, and a little bit born partly out of frustration, why couldn't I was doing a lot of abstract work, and I would see that a lot of the audience just wasn't really getting it. And it wasn't because of my branding, because, I had a consistent look and feel going on, and I had a very disciplined series that I was presenting. It was because they weren't getting it, and it wasn't their fault. It was just because no one really taught them how to read art or how to use art. I know that sounds a little strange, but I would liken it to the analogy, like, if you are feeling a little bit, if your energy's flagging, for instance, you reach for your favorite playlist that's going to lift you up and give you energy. Or if you're feeling a little down, or, if you've got the blues, you want to listen to the blues. Basically, we know exactly how to use music. We know how to use it to energize us, to sympathize with our moods. We use it. We know how to use music. We use it in a really interesting way. And the curious thing is, no one puts the amount of pressure on music the same way they put the amount of pressure on art, where if you just want to dance and you like Taylor Swift, you're just going to turn on, you're going to listen to your favorite Taylor Swift song and dance. You're not going to sit there and wonder about the structure of the music or the historical significance of it. You're just going to enjoy it. You're just going to let it move you and take you on its journey. But we put this bizarre pressure on art, where we go to an art museum and we feel like we're not smart enough to get it, and we feel like we have to know the historical significance of things, or we have to understand formal composition elements and things of that nature. And I really want to dispel that. I want people to access all of the juicy goodness that art can give you. So I actually went and wrote a course about this, and inspired very much by this book that talks about the 7 purposes of art. And I've broken it down in a really simple way that anyone can use it and understand it. It's kind of like art as wellness. And because I know the power of art, it has changed my life, and I want to give that back to other people.
So real briefly, what are those 7 areas? As opposed to taking the time for your full course here, but just so we can understand what those are.
Sure.
To get a taste.
Okay. Wow. Let me see. This is a good test for me to see if I can remember them all. So actually, one of the biggest ones is to remember what truly matters. So if you see a painting of, and that's very different to each person. So if you see a painting that reminds you of your favorite place, or a wonderful trip that you went on, or a moment in your past, and you hang that on the wall, and you get to look at it occasionally at moments, that's sort of like a touchstone. So that, to remember what matters is an important one. To keep our spirits up is another. And a very interesting one is it's a source of dignified sorrow. It's a place to actually experience nonverbal emotions. Like the example I would give is Picasso's Guernica, where it's about the Spanish Civil War, and it's a place to experience these emotions that are very, very hard to put in words. Like if you're grieving about something, or if you're frustrated or sorrowful about something, it's a really wonderful place to process those emotions. It can also be a wonderful rebalancing agent, where, say, for instance, if you're bored, it can excite you or inspire you. If you're feeling very scattered and very, very busy, it can be a place to calm you. So it's a great rebalancing agent. It's also a wonderful, very powerful self-knowledge tool. And what I mean by that is often we are quite a mystery to ourselves. And looking at art, whether it's art you don't like or art that you do like, it's an interesting place to discover, your own likes and dislikes, and a little bit about your own personality.
Yeah.
And to sort of help unravel the mystery of who you are. And then similar to that, another purpose is making the unfamiliar familiar. So learning about different cultures, or different ways of thinking and different ways of approaching something is another powerful purpose of art. And another one is to awaken our senses, to just resensitize us, because, you get busy and you get in a groove, and how many of us sort of get into a routine, and it sort of helps tap you back into yourself and into the moment and back into your body and into all 5 senses. It's a really powerful way of doing that.
Wow, that's good.
So those are the 7 purposes of art in a nutshell.
Wow, that's going to be a pretty big nutshell. A lot of material that I read presents the idea of fake it till you make it, or acting as if you're already there, whatever that there for success is for you. But other writers present the strong argument of creating out of a place of open vulnerability and authenticity. How do you see those 2 points of view in relation to each other, as an artist and also as a branding professional?
Okay. I think, that is a fabulous question. It's very interesting because I think both points are valid. So fake it till you make it. I believe that it is very important to, when you have an idea, to not get bogged down by perfectionism. Being a recovering perfectionist myself, in the past, in my pre-earthquake days, I would have an idea and I would build it up in my head, and I'd want to make it perfect. So it would just never get done. Fake it till you make it is a really great way to just step into taking action and not let all the resistance and negative thoughts and awful self-judgment things get in the way of actually putting your work out into the world, and not letting your music die with you, as Wayne Dyer said. So I think fake it till you make it is important, but I also think equally important is this notion of authenticity and vulnerability, because, wanting to present yourself in, a strong, polished, professional light is all well and good. But what people really gravitate towards is authenticity and vulnerability. So we have really, really incredibly strong authenticity meters in all of us. Authenticity is one of the most attractive qualities in other people, and it's something that we just get almost intuitively. Sometimes you can't quite put your finger on why you like someone or why you trust someone. It's usually because they're being very authentic. And there's also this opposition that happens when someone is just putting on a brave face and showing up and trying to be really polished and perfect. There's nothing to really grab onto, because we also sense underneath that maybe that isn't quite so authentic. And when there's no vulnerability, there's nowhere for us to attach to. I gave this talk in North Carolina, and I gave an example of visualizing two different people. One of the people was dressed in a beautiful, impeccable manner. They had not a hair out of place. When asked a question, they knew all the perfect answers, but they kept it all professional, and they didn't show any vulnerability, or they didn't share any personal information. Everything was just polished and perfect. And the other person was, just an honest, open person. They weren't necessarily all put together, and they might actually have put on one black sock and one blue sock because they got dressed in the dark that morning or something, and they admitted it, or they admitted that they were a bit nervous, and they shared personal information. They didn't necessarily know all the right answers, but they shared what worked for them. And then I asked the question, well, who would you like to have lunch with or stay in touch with? And usually that would be the person who is being vulnerable and just authentic. It makes them real. We don't really want to spend time with that polished, perfect person. We want to spend time with the real person that you can laugh with and, make mistakes with and relate to. It's about relatedness and relatability. And I wish more people would get that, because especially for artists, when you share yourself, you share your process, your behind the scenes, when it's not perfect yet, it enables you to bring people along for the ride. They get to come on your journey. They get to know you, the real you, and then they fall in love with you. They become really wonderful supporters and friends and collectors and followers. And that's true for any creative leader. When you're just honest and open and authentic, that's what people really fall in love with. And it's very hard to fall in love with polished, perfect, aloof type of person.
Well, I remember that story, and I also remember that it led into a story about how people buy into your brand by buying into that piece of your story that overlaps with the part of the story that represents who your client wants to be. Mm-hmm. In the Venn diagram of things, that sweet center, people look for parts of your story that match or align with theirs to develop relationships and connection. Do you want to dig that out a little bit as well?
Sure. Well, yes. So when you're being authentic and vulnerable and sharing who you really are, other people can see that and they know, they have an idea of who they want to be. And it's a little bit like when I went and saw those artist booths from a distance, I saw exactly what they were presenting, and I saw their story, and there was a part of, if it had interested me, that meant that there's this part of me that really could see myself living in that world, and I wanted to be part of their world. So there's definitely an alignment with my beliefs about who I want to be and what they're presenting and who they are. There's an overlap, and unless you're vulnerable and authentic, there won't be that overlap. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to dig back into that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Also wanted to touch on the impact that your 100-day challenge had on you. Some of the lessons that you learned from doing that Talk a little bit about how some of those lessons related to the